Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Eric Zimmer. Where we last left off in Danny the Champion of the World, the pheasants all awoke, and not only did the sleeping powder wear off of them, but they flew away back into the woods in the opposite direction of Mr. Victor Hazel's shooting party. I wonder what surprise is in store for him. Well, we're gonna find out in the last two chapters of Danny, the Champion of the World. You ready? Alright, let's begin. Chapter 21. Duck Spencer's Surprise. Along the road, a line of about 20 automobiles and trucks were parked bumper to bumper, and people were standing about in groups, laughing and talking about the astonishing sight they had just witnessed. "Come along now," Sergeant Samways called out, striding towards them. "Get going, get moving. We can't have this. You're blocking the highway." Nobody ever disobeyed Sergeant Samways, and soon the people were drifting back to their automobiles. In a few minutes, they too were all gone. Only the four of us were left now. Doc Spencer, Sergeant Samways, my father, and me. "Well, William," Sergeant Samways said, coming back from the road to join us beside the pumps. "Them pheasants was the most astonishing sight I ever seen in my entire life." "It was lovely," Doc Spencer said. "Just lovely. Didn't you enjoy it, Danny?" "Marvelous," I said. "Pity we lost them," my father said. "It very nearly broke my heart when they all started flying out of the carriage. I knew we'd lost them then." "But how in heaven's name did you ever catch them in the first place?" asked Sergeant Samways. "How did you do it, William? Come on, man, let me in on the secret." My father told him. He kept it short, but even then it made a fine story. And all the way through, the sergeant kept saying, "Well, I'd never. I'll be blowed. You could knock me down with a feather, stone the crows," and things like that. And when the story was finished, he pointed his long policeman's chin straight at my face and he cried, "I'll be jiggered. I never would have thought a little nipper like you could come up with such a fantastical brainwave as that. Young man, I congratulate you." "He'll go a long way, young Danny will. You see if he doesn't," Doc Spencer said. "He'll be a great inventor one day." To be spoken about like that by the two men I admired most in the world after my father made me blush and stutter. And as I stood there, wondering what on earth I was expected to say in reply, a woman's voice behind me cried out, "Oh, thank goodness that's over at last." This, of course, was Mrs. Grace Clipstone, who was now picking her way cautiously down the caravan steps with young Christopher in her arms. "Never in my life," she was saying, "have I seen such a shambles as that." The little white hat was still perched on the top of her head, and the white gloves were still on her hands. "What a gathering," she said, advancing towards us. "What a gathering we have here of rogues and varmints. Good morning, Enoch." "Good morning to you, Mrs. Clipstone," Sergeant Samway said. "How's the baby?" my father asked her. "The baby is better, thank you, William," she said, "though I doubt he'll ever be quite the same again." "Of course he will," Doc Spencer said. "Babies are tough." "I don't care how tough they are," she answered. "How would you like it if you were being taken for a nice quiet walk in your baby carriage on a pretty autumn morning, and you were sitting on a lovely soft mattress, and suddenly the mattress comes alive and starts bouncing you up and down like a stormy sea. And the next thing you know, there's about 100 sharp curvy beaks pointing up from underneath the mattress and pecking you to pieces." The doctor cocked his head over to one side, then to the other, and smiled at Mrs. Clipstone. "So you think it's funny?" she cried. "Well, just you wait, Dr. Spencer, and one night I'll put a few snakes or crocodiles or something under your mattress and see how you like it." Sergeant Samways was fetching his bicycle from beside the pumps. "Well, ladies and gents," he said, "I must be off to see who else is getting into mischief around here. I am truly sorry you were troubled, Enoch," my father said, "and thanks very much indeed for the help. I wouldn't have missed this one for all the tea in China," Sergeant Samways said. Well, the Chinese did invent tea. But it did sadden me most terribly, William, to see all those lovely birds go slipping right through our fingers like that. Because to my mind there don't exist a more luscious dish than roasted pheasant anywhere on this earth. It's going to sadden the vicar a lot more than it saddens you, said Mrs. Clipstone. That's all he's been talking about ever since he got out of bed this morning. The lovely roasted pheasant he's going to have for his dinner tonight. He'll get over it, Doc Spencer said. He will not get over it, and it's a beastly shame, Mrs. Clipstone said, because now all I've got to give him are some all frozen fillets of codfish. But, my father said, surely you don't load all those pheasants into the didn't load all those pheasants into the carriage, did you? You were meant to keep at least a dozen of you and the vicar. Oh, I know that, she wailed, but I was so trickled at the thought of strolling calmly through the village with Christopher sitting on 120 birds, I simply forgot to keep any back for ourselves. And now, alas, they are all gone, and so is the vicar's supper. The doctor went over to Mrs. Clipstone and took her by the arm. You come with me, Grace, he said. I've got something to show you. He led her across to my father's workshop, and the big doors stood wide open. The rest of us stayed where we were and waited. Good grief! Come and look at this, Mrs. Clipstone called out from inside the workshop. William! Enoch! Danny! Come and look! We hurried over and entered the workshop. It was a great sight. Laid out on my father's bench, amid the spanners and wrenches and oily rags, were 6 magnificent pheasants, 3 cocks and 3 hens. There we are, ladies and gentlemen, said the doctor, his small wrinkled face beaming with delight. How's that? He was speechless. 2 for you, Grace, to keep the vicar in a good mood, Doc Spencer said. 2 for Enoch for all the fine work he did this morning, and 2 for William and Danny, who deserve them most of all. What about you, Doctor? My father asked. That doesn't leave any for you. My wife has enough to do without plucking pheasants all day long, he said. And anyways, who got them out of the woods in the first place? You and Danny. But how on earth did you get them? My father asked them. When did you nab them? I didn't nab them, the doctor said. I had a hunch. What sort of hunch? My father asked. It seemed fairly obvious, the doctor said, that some of those pheasants must have gobbled up more than 1 raisin each. Some, if they were quick enough, might have swallowed half a dozen each, or even more, in which case they would have gotten a very heavy overdose of sleeping pills and wouldn't ever wake up. Aha! He cried. Of course, of course. So while you were all so busy driving the birds onto the old Hazel's Rolls Royce, I sneaked in here and had a look under the sheet in the bottom of the carriage. And there they were. Amazing! Sergeant Samway said. Absolutely amazing! Those were the greedy ones, the doctor said. It never pays to eat more than your fair share. Marvellous, my father cried. Well done, sir. Now come along, Grace, the doctor said. I'll drive you home. You can have this crazy baby carriage where you can leave this crazy baby carriage where it is. And Enoch, we'll take your birds with us and drop them off at your house on the way. We can't have the arm of the law cycling through the village with a brace of pheasants slung over his handlebars, can we? I'm very much obliged to you, Doctor, Sergeant Samway said. I really am. Oh, you lovely man, cried Mrs. Clipstone, flinging an arm around the tiny doctor and giving him a kiss on the cheek. My father and I loaded 4 of the pheasants into the doctor's car. Mrs. Clipstone got into the front seat with the baby, and the doctor sat himself behind the wheel. Don't be sad, William, he said to my father through the window as he drove off. It was a famous victory. Then Sergeant Samways mounted his bicycle and waved us goodbye and pedalled away down the road in the direction of the village. He pedalled slowly, and there was a certain majesty in the way he held himself. His head high and his back very straight, as though he were riding a fine thoroughbred mare instead of an old black bike. And finally, Chapter 22. My father. It was all over now. My father and I stood alone outside the workshop. Suddenly the old place seemed to have become very quiet. Well, Danny, my father said, looking at me with those twinkly eyes of his. That's that. It was fun, Dad. I know it was, he said. I really loved it, I said. So did I, Danny. He placed one hand on my shoulder and we began walking slowly towards the caravan. Maybe we should lock the pumps and take a holiday for the rest of the day, he said. You mean not open up at all? Why should we, he said. After all, it's Saturday, isn't it? But we always stay open Saturdays, Dad, and Sundays. Maybe it's time we didn't, he said. We could do something else instead, something more interesting. I waited, wondering what was coming next. When we reached the caravan, my father climbed the steps and sat down on the little outside platform. He allowed both of his legs, the plaster one and the good one, to dangle over the edge. I climbed up and sat down beside him with my feet on the steps of the ladder. It was a fine place to sit, the bottom of the caravan. It was such a quiet, comfortable place to sit and talk and do nothing in the pleasant weather. The people with houses have a front porch or a terrace instead, with big chairs to lounge in, but I wouldn't have traded either of those for our wooden platform. I know a place about 3 miles away, my father was saying, over Cobbler's Hill and down the other side, where there's a small wood of larch trees. It is a very quiet place, and the stream runs right through it. The stream, I said. He nodded and gave me another of his twinkly looks. It's full of trout, he said. Could we? I cried. Could we go there, Dad? Why not, he said. We could try tickling them the way Doc Spencer told us. Will you teach me, I said. I haven't had much practice with trout, he told me. Pheasants are more on my line, but we could always learn. Can we go now? I asked, getting excited all over again. I thought we could just pop into the village first and buy the electric oven, he said. You haven't forgotten about the electric oven, have you? But Dad, I said, that was when we thought we were going to have lots and lots of pheasants to roast. We've still got the 2 the Doc gave us, he said, and with any luck we'll have lots more of them as the weeks go by. It's time we had an oven anyway. Then we can roast things properly instead of heating up baked beans in a saucepan. We could have roasted pork one day, and if we like it, we could have roasted leg of lamb the next time, or even roasted beef. Wouldn't you like that? Yes, I said, of course I would. And Dad, would you be able to make your favourite thing of all? What's that, he asked. Toad in the hole, I said. By golly, he cried. That'll be the very first thing we'll make in our new oven. Toad in the hole. I'll make it in an enormous pan, the same as my old mum, with the Yorkshire pudding very crisp and raised up in the huge bubbly mountains, and the sausages nestling in between the mountains. Between the mountains. Can we get it today, Dad? Will they deliver it at once? They might, Danny. We'll have to see. Couldn't we order it now on the telephone? We mustn't do that, my father said. We must go personally to Mr. Wheeler and inspect all the different models with great care. All right, I said, let's go. I was really stemmed up now about getting an oven and being able to have toad in the hole and roasted pork and things like that. I couldn't wait. My father got to his feet. And when we've done that, he said, we'll go off to the stream and see if we can't find us some big rainbow trout. We could take some sandwiches with us for lunch and eat them beside the stream. That will make a good day of it. A few minutes later, the 2 of us were walking down the well-known road towards the village to buy the oven. My father's iron foot went clink-clink on the hard surface, and overhead some big black thunderclouds were moving slowly down the valley. Dad, I said. Yes, my love? When we have our roasted pheasant supper with our new oven, do you think we could invite Dr. Spencer and Mrs. Spencer to eat it with us? Great heavens, my father cried. What a wonderful thought. What a beautiful idea. We'll have a dinner party in their honor. The only thing is, I said, will there be enough room in the caravan for 4 people? I think so, he said. Just. But we've only got 2 chairs. That's no problem, Danny. You and I can sit on boxes. There was a short silence. Then he said, but I'll tell you what we must have, and that's a tablecloth. We can't serve dinner to the doctor and his wife without a tablecloth. But we don't have a tablecloth, Dad. Don't you worry about it, my father said. We can use a sheet from one of the bunks. That's all a tablecloth is. A sort of sheet. What about knives and forks, I asked. How many do we have? I'll look at them. Just 2 knives, they said, and 2 forks. And those are a bit dented. We shall buy 2 more of each, my father said. We shall give our guests the new ones and use the old ones ourselves. Good, I said. Lovely. I reached out and slid my hand into his. He folded his long fingers around my fist and held it tight, and we walked on towards the village where soon the two of us would be inspecting all the different ovens with great care and talking to Mr. Wheeler personally about them. And after that we would walk home again and make up some sandwiches for our lunch. And after that we would set off with the sandwiches in our pockets, striding up over Cobbler's Hill and down the other side of the small wood of larch trees that had the stream running through it. And after that, perhaps a big rainbow trout. And after that, there would be something else after that. And after that, yes, and something else again. Because what I am trying to tell you, what I have been trying to tell so hard to tell you all along, is simply that my father, without the slightest doubt, was the most marvelous and exciting father any boy ever had. And there's a little note for a message to children who have read this book. When you grow up and have children of your own, do please remember something important. A stodgy parent is no fun at all. What a child wants and deserves is a parent who is sparky. I must remember that when I have my own family. The end. Hope you enjoy Danny the Champion of the World, and I'll see you next time on Storytime with Eric Zimmer. Take care.